You're watching Rurouni K95's anime review on Violence Jack Hell's Wind. Hi Ruronis, this is your pal Rurouni K95 here, and today's anime review, I get to cover the final Violence Jack OVA for today's anime review, which is the anime OVA from 1990, which is in the early 90s, which is Violence Jack Hell's Wind. Violence Jack Hell's Wind is a violent, perverted, and colorful OVA by Go Nagai, based on the Violence Jack manga arc about the biker gang fucking up a town and a chick as well. In the second Violence Jack OVA, Violence Jack Hell's Wind is not written by somebody who worked on Angel Cop or Genocider, but except for Violence Jack Evil Town OVA, which is basically Shoikawa, which I've already covered on my previous anime review on Violence Jack Evil Town OVA. So, Violence Jack Hell's Wind, however, this is the third and final Violence Jack OVA, which is the third one. So let's review Violence Jack Evil Town. No, what I said, Violence Jack Evil Town. Well, for Violence Jack Hell's Wind, let's review Violence Jack Hell's Wind. So let's start the review on Violence, because this is Violence Jack Hell's Wind. It started off in Japan after the Kanto H2 quake busts Japan. This couple named Jun and Tetsuya are attacked by the Hell's Wind biker gang. In self-defense, they ice one of the bikers, so the bikers attack him. Tetsuya is in chainsaw dead, and Jun is molested a lot off screen and swears vengeance afterwards. Later in Hope Town, this teacher is teaching wasteland kids how to learn in a makeshift school. At least they ain't in the uniform what you expect seeing in post-apocalyptic animes like Apocalypse Zero as well. One boy named Saburo is always gets the hots for her. Later, she goes to see his rents about trading for food, and the biker gang attacks them. So they try to hide, but they fucked up the town, and slag a bunch of those as Joker cuts off the teacher's clothes. Saburo can't take it and springs it to her defense with a bow and arrow made at home, but people lynched and ripped it apart isn't enough to get him out. Then June comes in and blows him up with bow and arrows. The gang retreats, but June follows and is stopped by some bikers staying behind. Oh yeah, Jack appeared to June while she was shooting soda pop cans, which we'll get to the soda pop cans in just a moment in this review on Violence Jack Hell's Wind, with a OAB top B4, and she went out to fight the gang or something because of that. So the bikers are stopped by Jack, who flings bikes and riders away with one arm and splatters him on a building that is never seen again. And also, Dante sends a guy with a grenade on his groin to kamikaze, but it blows off Jack's coat. So they shred him with gunfire for like 2 minutes. Actually, it was like 50 seconds solid. Saburo somehow gets there and is kind of disturbing by seeing a man shot endlessly, but when Jack spills blood on him and Jack tells him not to turn away. Eventually, Jack kneels over and the gang goes by. June shows up, and she and Sabu bring him back to Hope Town as well. By this time, somehow, and she goes off to save the teacher Keiko, who was kidnapped by the gang when they left to see the town from June's attack. Saburo tries to get the people to rise up, but his dad smacks him, saying there's nothing to do. Saburo tells him off, and Jack is impressed by his spunk and decides to help. June attacks the base, the gang stay, but is caught and tortured with a big A55 knife on her body. Then Jack's big A-55 knife slices the knife's head. So Jack attacks. Gokumon tries to a rocket launcher, but Jack catches it and slags him. On also, Jack brings down a helicopter and chucks it with one arm. By this time, Dante tries to get away, but Jack chucks his knife like the cross in Castlevania, which is probably what you expect seeing Castlevania reference in the process in Violence Jack Hellswind, and slices it off Dante's legs and splits his bike into two pieces, like itsy bitsy pieces in the process. Yep. So then Jack crushes in Dante's head with a stomp, and he pukes blood, which is very gory in what you expect seeing violence and gore in Violence Jack Evil Town OVA, of how it's just how it is what it is. Afterward, Jack talks with the survivors, and Saburo tells him that his name. Jack goes off saying to get strong. Oh, and in the fight with the gang, Dante sends Griffin to get help from the Slum King, which you see the Slum King, which particularly appeared originally from my previous anime review on Violence Jack Harem Bomber OVA. And before the credits, he's seen tied to post in their Slum King's car gang thing as the Slum King opens his eyes awesomely. To be continued, but it was never to be continued in the process, because they ain't doing any more Violence Jack. Everyone's probably how expect seeing and might get triggered by it. So for the thing about Violence Jack Hellswind OVA, in the how it's different from the manga, especially. Of course, in the original Violence Jack manga, Tetsuya was hassled by the gang and flew off the road, and however, in the anime, he was directly slagged by them with a chainsaw as well, and they boned his girlfriend. In the manga, however, Jack took several bullets from his magnum to bring him down. However, in the anime, he just stands there getting shot for a while before falling over. Also, Saburo wasn't there to see Jack's defeat, especially in the anime OVA Violence Jack Hellswind. However, in the manga, June was bathing nude in a pond. When Jack showed up, However, in the anime, she was doing target practice on top. Even though he kind of scares her, though. However, in the manga, June only has a small scar and gets whipped later. However, in the anime, she is covered with scars and is missing a nipple, which is probably weird in the process. By this time, in the original manga, they tortured June as a punishment for killing all but 6 of their gang, trying to her above a fire and whipping her. However, in the anime, they tie her up and Joker cuts her with a knife. However, in the original manga, Gokumon catches June by grabbing her motorcycle when he jumps out of a hole. In the manga, however, in the anime, she goes to their base and surrenders when outnumbered. So, of course, the Slum King, which has originally appeared from Violence Jack Harem Bomber, which I've already covered my previous anime review on Violence Jack Harem Bomber, did appear in the Violence Jack Hellswind OVA. However, in the original manga, the gang didn't have any connection to the Slum King, especially. Saburo Tenma was called Sabu in the original manga. I think they changed it because of Sabu from Violence Jack Harem Bomber was using his name, which is probably more different. Every same name that is particularly from which is basically sounded very familiar to the other anime of the previous Violence Jack OVA, which is Violence Jack Harem Bomber, which I've already covered my previous anime review on Violence Jack Harem Bomber. And yes, this anime OVA, Violence Jack Hellswind, wasn't made by somebody who worked on Angel Cop, Genesis Cyber, or Urotsuki Doji, because Shoakawa only did Violence Jack Evil Town OVA, which I've already covered my previous anime review on my since last time as well. And also, so speaking of which, this was part two of the third in the West, where it's parts three of the Violence Jack series in the right order, probably because the Slum King appears at the end, and they thought it would have been no better to lead into the only one where Jack fights the Slum King. Jack is in Band-Aids might be a thing on Akira Fudo in the Devilman the Demon Bird OVA, where he's got a similar Band-Aids. If you compare that to Devilman the Demon Bird OVA, which I've already covered my previous anime review on Devilman Demon Bird OVA, especially. Oh, and the character cameos, which sounded familiar in Violence Jack Hellswind OVA. Jun is a thing on the character Jun Hano, and also, Tetsuya is a thing on Tetsuya Tsurugi from the familiar anime TV series from 1974, Great Mazinger, which ironically, Mazinger Z and Great Mazinger is the more popular one, I guess. And Dante is a thing on Mao Dante from Demon Lord Dante. Also, the soda pop cans where Jun shoots a can of Hagoromo pineapple, corn, Jolt Cola, and Pepsi while training. You could notice the Jolt Cola logo and the Pepsi in the Violence Jack Hellswind OVA, especially what you see. What is it with anime character cameos from other animes in this cameo of Violence Jack Hellswind OVA, which I've realized because, Jun and Tetsuya in Violence Jack Hellswind is basically a thing that is from another anime that was from Go Nagai, which is the 1974 anime television series Great Mazinger, especially, which ironically, Great Mazinger is particularly the more popular one. And yes, this was made by Studio 88, which is the same company that worked on Violence Jack Evil Town OVA, except for Violence Jack Harem Bomber, because Violence Jack Harem Bomber was done by Ashi Productions as well. But for Violence Jack Hellswind OVA, it was released on November 9th, 1990. And yes, all three of the Violence Jack OVAs were available on DVD from Discotheque Media as well, particularly for all three episodes of the Violence Jack OVA. Because, Violence Jack Hellswind, particularly, is the third and final Violence Jack OVA, because this is your typical... Because, Violence Jack particularly have a connection to Devilman as well. Because, when Violence Jack has bandages on his body, which if you compare that to Akira Fudo in the Devilman the Demon Bird OVA, which I've already covered my anime review on Devilman the Demon Bird OVA, particularly in my previous anime review, I guess, as well. Because Violence Jack is created by Go Nagai on a stormy night, which is particularly as a manga series in 1973, which is almost would have been a particular sequel to Devilman as well, particularly for the Violence Jack OVA as well. Who is the... Yeah, but this anime was released in But Violence Jack Hellswind OVA came out in 1990, which is within 2 years after Violence Jack Evil Town OVA, as well as a year after Devilman the Demon Bird OVA, I guess. So that's going to be it for my anime review on Violence Jack Hellswind for today's anime review. Thank you for watching, but before we go, here's my thoughts on it. It looks like it's been a long hell of a ride on reviewing all three of the Violence Jack OVAs because Bennett the Sage refused to review them. That's why, like I said, if Bennett the Sage doesn't review Violence Jack, I will review him, which I've covered all three episodes of the Violence Jack OVA, I guess. Hope subscribe for content. My anime planet link in the description down below. You can share this video on your Twitter and Facebook if you have Twitter and Facebook account and all social media. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up by clicking on the like button on this video. Feel free to leave in the comments in the comment section below in this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, RoniK95. Feel free to join my channel, especially if you're new to my channel. Hit the notifications bell button. Be sure to get notified and keep it otaku for this anime review. And I got another anime review coming up for tomorrow. Stay tuned for my next anime review tomorrow. I got to cover another anime movie from the 80s, starting with my anime review on Dirty Pair Project Eden. Stay tuned for my next anime review on Dirty Pair Project Eden, because you won't want to miss another anime review.